Welcome to the In My Opinion show with Ronald Barry Robinson and friends. With us, we have a spectacular panel. We have Mr. Henry Hatter.
Good evening, Ron.
We have Mr. Richard Dix Jr.
Good evening, Ron.
Welcome all to the In My Opinion show. What's your thoughts on gay and lesbian marriages? Gay marriage legalization in several states and the public's growing acceptance of same-sex unions have Democrats sensing political opportunity and some Republicans reevaluating their party's hardline opposition to an issue that long has rallied its base. In recent weeks, Vermont and Iowa have legalized same-sex marriages, while New York, Maine, and New Hampshire have taken steps in that direction. Polls show younger Americans are far more tolerant on the issue than our older generations. For now, at least, the public is much more focused on the troubled economy and two wars than on social issues. Mr. Hatter, what is your thoughts on gay and lesbian marriages?
Thank you, Ron. First of all, I got to give my counterpart here lessons in platform issues. This is a Republican platform issue. $1 billion don't make you a Republican, but this is a typical Republican platform issue, like the right to life. Republicans are very dedicated on this issue, and I can tell you that. And I'm kind of relaxed on the position because I don't, while I would not practice the behavior myself, nor would I want my children to do it or any of my relatives or friends to do it. But I think that we're just evolving as a country, so diverse, so different, intended to be inclusive, to make everybody's life worthwhile living, and I think that we need to find a way to find a common ground with Democrats on this issue. I would oppose any effort by Republicans or by Democrats or by gods or by churches to do anything to hurt people because they have this practice. You know, a lot of people got hurt or killed in past years because they were gays or homosexuals, even in the military. And I oppose that. I still do. And I would hope that my party opposes that as well. There are degrees of which I accept this. And one of those is going out and, of course, getting people hurt, killed, or attacked. But other than that, I believe that the platform is the way to go. But I just think that other people should have their rights, but not interfere with the platform.
Let me say this. My personal opinion on this is that I do not have a problem with same-sex marriages, okay? People, you cannot legislate love, all right? You cannot legislate who you should be with, nor should government legislate that, all right? Countries around the world are embracing same-sex marriages around the world, okay? Leave these people alone to marry whomever they please. Mr. Dix, you have some strong feelings on this.
Absolutely. And let me say that while I'm willing to extend any protection to anyone to ensure that there's no harm or injury that is caused because of an individual behavior, I think that would be deplorable to attack an individual because of an act. However, I would strongly advise that as a spiritual being having human experiences, God's law prevail. Now, some who are religious or not would say, well, that's God loves us. Yes, he does. And there's redemption if you repent. He strictly says in the Bible that homosexuality is detestable to his eyes. And make no mistake about homosexuality and God's law is not one. It is something that he will send you to the lake of fire. Now, those who he loves, and he still chastises them. So God's law, one, stands for me as one reason why I oppose homosexuality. As it relates to the idea of a marriage, let's really look at this. And
Let me just want to say one thing.
Yeah.
What you're talking about, this information comes out of the New Testament, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay,
And the O.
Now, the New Testament was rewritten by allegedly the King of England, and he was homosexual.
Well, I think you're referring to King James,
Exactly.
and there were many King James, like there were many pharaohs. But let's make it clear that there's only one King, and that's the Almighty El of the heavens and the earth. But let's give kudos and applaud Miss America for consciously speaking to her values and sticking to what she had learned as a young person, and it cost her the crown. But let's be sure that we must applaud her for speaking to her conscience. Now, am I opposed to individual having some liberty to choose a particular life changing event such as a marriage? No, I'm not. And if an individual man wants to marry another man and rub their face and their genitals on each other, that's their private choice. But there's also penalties. But let's say that this marriage takes its course. It is not the same as one would argue on the grounds of having some civil right as blacks in America had to fight for to gain civil right. That is not the same thing. It is not the same as using race. For example, when blacks were not allowed to marry white women, and that was a legislative, that became law where it was a penalty if you did get married. Although those laws were struck down, that is not the same as being married to one another. I think there's a choice that we must make, and sometimes individuals who choose to fight for the liberty to have a mate so that they can leave their items to them if they were to divorce. You can leave a will and leave those items to that individual if this is about things. But as it stands, we have to really look at the conditions of a people that says, hey, you know what, we want to be married for what? And I think a point off the air, we talked about the economic implications and that is getting divorced. Then now these attorneys can get their hands on in the courts and begin to fight and separate. With some of the divorces, marriages that took place in certain states that have authorized this already and legalized it, many of them are divorced. But let me turn you to one known fact that is now virtually off the radar, and that is domestic violence with same-sex couples. That has increased dramatically, and it is being ignored, not just in our schools. It is being ignored in the legal system. They're counting them as assaults and not domestic violence. If you're going to have a relationship, then you got to have the penalties to go along with it. And many of the times, the police are not arresting individuals unless it's some traumatic injury that is caused. So we have to look at laws that are not working for same-sex couples that needs to work. For example, when they're fighting in the home, then someone needs to be arrested. We do not need individuals being assaulted and then a gang of gays or a gang of lesbians or transsexuals or transgender going over to one's house and they're going to fight a group. This is a real issue, and this has not been discussed in the media. Domestic violence among same-sex couples has risen dramatically, and it is off the radar. So let's focus on the laws that protect them first, as same-sex couples before we announce prenuptial, nuptials and take them down the aisle. Let's deal with the laws that protect them first, and that's from their own individual mate. So that's my opinion. I think that we need to look at that law first, and then let's progressively look at other laws.
But you you have said that you don't believe in the concept of marriage because the Bible says that's prohibited, right?
Well, I do believe in marriage.
I'm talking about same-sex marriage.
Oh, absolutely. No, that's
Did you
not
say
in the Bible.
But you say that in your eyes, then that's prohibited, right?
In my eyes, it is immoral for homosexuality to even take its course, to even engage in it.
Okay.
It is detestable before the Almighty God's eyes, and those who engage in it will be punished. And whether we believe in the afterlife or the soul of that individual being suffering, they'll soon find out.
I gather that you believe that.
Oh, I believe strongly and wholeheartedly that there is a lake of fire. I believe that there is a second heaven. I believe that there's a third, fourth, fifth, and I believe that there's going to be levels in which you'll be measured. If you sow to your flesh, you will reap corruption. You
but
see?
all of the other things you've talked about was really a cop-out on your major argument, because you did say that you think that same-sex marriages would be detestable. Okay.
I believe homosexuality is detestable.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you get married to another man or another woman marries another woman and they engage in homosexuality, then in the eyes of God, that is abomination. And some people will oppose me believing and talking about it because they don't want you to stand on principle. But like Miss America, Mr. America is going to speak. And I'm going to say that I'm against it because it is against the God's law, the only law that stands. And man's laws will be abolished.
See, this is where a lot of people take that to the next level. That's violence. If you say God don't believe it, you don't believe it, then these people in the eyes of many people have to be expunged, killed, or hurt.
Oh, no.
Degraded. Hold it now. You take it. We've seen this happen.
Yes.
And I'd just like to let you know that you are aligned with one of the Republicans' strongest platforms.
Yes.
And can you see that?
Yes, I can
you
see
can't
that.
get away from it.
Yes, and I believe that the Republicans have it right on this one, and our president has it wrong. Although he has to play to the audience, I believe that he does have that wrong. But let me say this: when it comes to any form of assault, be it against a male, female, same-sex couples, those who are engaged in homosexuality, I think it's wrong. I think anyone who harms another human being, if you're not in the act of kindness, then I believe anything opposed to that is demonic. So if an individual decides to injure a person because they are a male, because they are female, because they have practicing a particular behavior, I think that's wrong, and I believe that individual or group should be punished for what they've done. You cannot commit an act of violence against an individual because of your own preconceived notions. I do believe that there should be laws that strengthen and protect those who identify themselves as having been gay or lesbian. I think there should be laws to protect them. But I do not believe for any reason that marriage is necessary other than for economic gain. I think that is the reason why many of these groups are fighting for it, because they're looking for things. They're looking for partnerships that will lead to them being able to establish that I was once married to you, therefore I'm entitled to half of the house, or I'm entitled to the car, and these things allow individuals to maintain something out of this. And many of these, and we need to look at the same-sex couples right now and see if these relationships are even surviving.
Mr. Dix, how is this different than traditional marriage?
Well,
Do they look for the same thing? They look for our life, sharing with each other of comfort,
Yeah.
of having things together.
I think
What-
Adam
what-
and Eve showed that, and not Steve and Adam. So we have to look at how God made us. If He made
Well, what's wrong with it, giving it to the other? I'm taking your argument and reversing it on you. What's wrong with homosexuals?
Okay, let's take a look at medically. If one have sex with a female, and using the common traditional role of the penis into the vagina, and this is very graphic for the viewers, but the penis going into the vagina, if that sperm does not enter and become and conceives, then it comes back out. If it is that penis, that same penis enters into the rectum has muscles, and once the sperm is released, it is difficult for the sperm to come out because it's either going to do one or two things. One is going to fertilize, it's going to meet and create life, or it's going to come out. If it remains inside, then the properties of sperm, and you can, for the viewers, you can look it up on the internet, for the properties of the sperm, it will begin to break itself down and turn into a wicked virus or a wicked a germ and begin to tear apart the insides. It can affect the immune system. And once the immune system begins to attach itself, and anyone who's familiar with medical and any medical doctors out there will know that disease began in the colon. And now when you have a sperm that's inside the walls of the rectum, if it is not released, it is going to begin to emit bacteria that's going to do damage. And repeated insertions in there will begin to tear down the muscles of the gluteus maximus. And what happens then is that a person cannot adequately hold their bowels and so on. You get the point. That the point is that it is an act that is so traumatic to that area. And if you further study it, you can find that it contributes to the HIV or AIDS virus. But that's something that individuals have to research themselves to determine that.
No comment.
No comment? Well, thank you, Dr. Dix.
I wish, yeah.
The worst thing to have is sight and no vision. Was it arrogance or just plain stupidity? General Motors chairman and CEO Rick Wagner had to go. He should have been told to hit the road years ago. These harsh comments come as GM and Chrysler continue to beg for over $21 billion more of taxpayer dollars. The performance of some of the management is reprehensible, to say the least. I personally am not shedding one damn tear for Wagner. You lose billions of dollars a year, you get millions of dollars in salary, and you get $22 million to leave a company that as president and CEO you brought to the brink of collapse. According to published reports, GM has lost more than $82 billion in the last 5 years. In addition to Wagner's dismissal, the board of directors should leave as well. Let GM and Chrysler file for Chapter 11 reorganization. In a bankruptcy, you would bring all the stockholders, the management, the bondholders, the shareholders, the workers, the unions, the dealers, the suppliers, everybody to the table and say, let's work this out so it's fair to everyone. While Wagner and other auto execs did not foresee that they had to compete, that the world was changing, that people wanted a more fuel-efficient, the world wanted more fuel-efficient cars that were friendlier to the environment is beyond me. So did these idiots last? How did these idiots last so long in management? What's your thoughts on this GM and Chrysler fiasco?
Well,
Henry, what's your thoughts? Or go ahead, Richard.
Oh, sure. Well, this 31-year career ended after this administration, the president, decided that there has to be a new direction. Since they're asking for bailout, certainly there's going to be some imposition. Let's take a look at the 2006. In that year, for the last 4 years, GM has lost under Rick Wagner approximately $82 billion. So they were on a slide already on that sliding scale. Now, this may have been for the lack of vision, because this interest in building big trucks and not fuel efficient vehicles has really hurt General Motors. I think the sizable bonuses rewarding themselves for failure. But here's where the rubber meets the road. Kurt Kerkorian, many of us know that through the Reliant, had an interest in GM and trying to navigate them out of this destructive path. And Mr. Wagner flatly denied his assistance and even partnership. And the result of that said that they were not ready to go into another direction. But the problem became when this hard-nosed position that he dug in for himself, where bondholders said, hey, we have to go in another direction. As you know, the economy is changing. There's a transition, and we're going to be bankrupt, and that would be disastrous for us. Well, he still wouldn't go in another direction, and no one had the guts to challenge Rick Wagner. With this new election, with this president coming in after this election, we know that there's going to be a transition in the economy, specifically when we talk about biofuels, fuel cells, biodiesel, and not to mention wind, solar. Collectively, we could begin to make fuel-efficient vehicles. And Wagner, I don't believe, saw that as the immediate future. He believed that they would be probably surviving, and as soon as the economy come up, they can get back to business as usual. Well, they didn't see it that way, and consequently, Fritz Henderson, and I believe I said his name right, stepped in, and the GM head is out. And I believe that, but here's where I oppose government stepping in and imposing its will. Because it says to the private sector that we will take over your company if you're not making good decisions. And we can do that if you ask us for some money. I don't see homes being bailed out. I don't see the local market store being bailed out. I don't see any of these other companies being bailed out. And this may be rising to the Republican philosophy, but I'm opposed to the bailout. I say let them fail, but I do believe that it would ultimately affect millions of people, and specifically the Michiganians, who are going to suffer a great deal with this 9-month layoff that they're going to take during the summer, or 9 weeks, I believe.
What's your thoughts on this, Mr. Heder?
Well, I think that there are two components to the question. One is the corporation itself, and one is its leadership. I believe at all costs the corporation must survive. The corporation itself belongs to the people. The corporation is greater than any one single individual, and it should survive. And Americans out there ought to look at this as a institution that ought to survive. It produced great wealth over the last 100 years. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, this is the 101 year of the birth of General Motors Corporation, and May 18th, 1908. And we should be grateful. And over the years, it's created tremendous amounts of wealth for us. There's no other way. We'll go back through this again, and I'll try to impose this upon you, Mr. Chair. But there's no other way to make business other than government. And we have to really depend on corporations. That is how we must build a product. We must sell a service to people offshore so that the gold will flow back here to this country and increase the cost of living so that all people derive from it. We've done that for 100 years. And not only was General Motors there, but Ford and Chrysler and others who helped to build this empire for what it is. Its leadership is secondary.
Okay.
I agree that Rick Wagner should go. He knew back in the 60s that we, and you guys are preaching to the choir, that they were cooking the books, and they misled hundreds of thousands of GM employees and Americans. Well, they raked off the top, but at the same time, there was people stealing off the bottom too.
Sure.
There we were just rotten with all kind of ills. The system was, and so when Barack Obama comes in, he says, "Well, look, we got to put some controls over big business. We no longer have the laissez-faire type of business, and Americans ought to be glad that we're taking those kind of steps." Because those corporations belong to all of the people.
Absolutely.
Two ladies talking in heaven. Hi, my name is Wanda. Second woman. Hi, I'm Kelly. How'd you die? First woman. I froze to death. Second woman. How horrible. First woman. It wasn't so bad. After I quit shaking from the cold, I began to get warm and sleepy and finally died a peaceful death. What about you? Second woman. I died of a massive heart attack. I suspected that my husband was cheating, so I came home early to catch him in the act, but instead I found him all by himself in the den watching TV. First woman. So what happened? Second woman. I was so sure there was another woman there somewhere that I started running all over the house looking. I ran up into the attic and searched and down into the basement. Then I went through every closet and checked under all the beds. I kept this up until I had looked everywhere, and finally I became so exhausted that I just kneeled over with a heart attack and died. First woman. Too bad you didn't look in the freezer. We'd both still be alive. If you would like to contact the In My Opinion show, go to flinttalkradio.com. Also, go to inmyopinionrbr@aol.com or inmyopinionrbr@AOL. Shit. One more time. inmyopinionrbr@att.net. This is Ronald Barry Robinson.